A lot of the times when people try to make a transformation, we focus so much on the problems that we make the problem bigger than it really is. They become insurmountable. And through experience and research, I've learned that a better approach is to figure out where we want to be. And once we figured out where we want to be, then what we do is go through identifying what our strengths are so we can apply our strengths to get to where we want to be.
It's time to reinvent.
Welcome to the Lessons of Entrepreneurship, the journey of reinvention. Today I have a special guest, and if you've been listening and following the show, he's no stranger to you. I have Larry Easto here, and Larry helps self-employed professionals grow their businesses. Larry, thank you for coming back, and please remind our audience who you are and what your mission is.
First, it's a joy to be back. One of the things I've realized over the years is that when you're a self-employed professional providing services to clients, it's not so much about running a business. It's all about building relationships and maintaining relationships. And the best way to do that is authentically. So what I try to do is help self-employed professionals succeed in their businesses the same way they succeed in building and maintaining friendships. So instead of a business model, it's more of a personal one-on-one kind of a thing. It seems pretty worthy.
Larry has over 40 years of experience in professional services. Please remind the audience the career path that you've taken.
It hasn't been easy. It hasn't been straight. For the most part, it's been fun. I used to say that I'm a master of default decisions. I made a lot of decisions by default, but now I realize it was probably meant to be. I had to pick up a lot of experience along the way. I graduated from university, didn't know what I wanted to do, so I went to law school, wound up practicing law, working for a couple of other lawyers as a result of a disagreement over how a file should be handled. I started my own practice, and that was my first shot at running my own business. The lawyer in a small town, so I moved to Vincent to become a consultant. And from there, did some writing and some training and coaching, and this is where I'm now. Pulling together some of my life lessons learned in order that I can package them and pass them on to others so they can share some of the benefits without the frustrations I've had along the way.
We're excited to learn more about that. Your transformation connection. Larry, you talked about how you're working on this course and putting the final bits and pieces together the last time we spoke.
By way of backstory, I moved a few years ago and it just got a tremendous surge of creative energy. So I started writing a book, and one book turned into two books. And I thought, gee, do I really want to have two books to try to market? So then what I did was consolidate business kinds of content into the book and thought, hey, let's put the rest of this into a video course. So it's not as much about running a business, but about making the transformation from where we are to where we want to be. And I think instead of starting out from scratch, we say, what have we done well? How can we use this to get further along the line? So instead of a standard formula that was developed by a great MBA somewhere, it's a do-it-yourself process that guides us with the starting point of where do I want to be and what do I have to do to get there? And where we want to be, instead of all sorts of complicated theories and objectives and terminology, that kind of stuff, I like to keep it simple. Where we want to be is what do we want to have, what do we want to do, and what do we want to be. So then we focus building our strengths to achieve those desired end results. So try to simplify it as much as possible. As a writer, I like simplifying things. I don't like jargon. I don't like labels. I don't like fancy theories. So I've tried to simplify it as much as I possibly can. And it's worked. On Sunday, as a matter of fact, I was talking to somebody who'd been through the course, and he said it's so easy because it answers questions I have in words I can understand. I'm going, wow, I did it. I did what I wanted to do. So that's what I pulled together.
For the person who's listening, thinking, probably I've read a couple of books, try to create transformation, or I've taken this course and that course, and I'm really at the point of, if I'm to take this, what will be different?
Over the past couple of years, I've become more aware of the fact that I'm a highly sensitive person. 20 to 30% of the population are highly sensitive. And I've done that for years, but it was like a Myers-Briggs assessment. Nice to know, but so what? I one time learned more about the attributes of being a highly sensitive person. I started to realize these are the kinds of attributes that any reasonably intelligent and motivated person can use to make a difference in their lives. And things like intuition, things like focus, things like thorough analysis, all of those kinds of things factor into it. After I'd finished the course, I was thinking about being a high sensitive person, and I realized that so many of the HSP attributes I had internalized and built into the course. It's based on real life practice rather than theoretical background. And so I'm asking questions like, what did you really enjoy doing? And why did you like it? How can you use that attitude or that skill to do something better? How can you do it to get to where you want to be? So instead of objective kinds of things, it's totally subjective. There's no right answer, no wrong answer. It's just what works for you. And what's really interesting is I've heard a podcast earlier, and this was involving Elaine Tarrant, who was basically a person who discovered HSP. She described HSP exactly the way I described my course. Inadvertently, I'll say, without deliberate intention, I've packaged it to make it easy for people to grab hold of rather than talking to them. I want to talk with them and give tools that they can all use or play with.
It sounds like this concept of highly sensitive person has a lot to do with allowing yourself to reach where you want to go, whatever success is for you, however you have defined it, by intuition, by following your own intuition.
I think a lot of us are more intuitive than we really want to accept. I trained as a lawyer. Well, my training was get the facts, cold, hard information. But now I'm realizing that if I have an intuitive insight, the next step is to find the information to back up and support the intuition. We have a lot of personal skills. Gosh, we have skills that we don't even know of that can be really useful in building a business. Even being HSP, highly sensitive person, is a neurodivergency. It's on a scale, the same scale as attention deficit disorder and those kinds of things. People with attention deficit disorder have skills that lots of others don't. They can really hyper-focus, for example, whereas a lot of people can't focus to that degree. So it's a case of really going a little deeper into and what are the skills we have and applying them to help us get to where we want to be. So instead of using a prepackaged theory, it starts inside, and you start inside and then you go from there. And that's been the story like forever. Know thyself and to thine own self be true. What's happened along the way is the industrial age taught us about standardization and formalism, procedures and all that kind of thing. So now we have gurus saying, if you do exactly what I did, you too will be successful. Sounds good. But I don't have the same kinds of skills that person does. Or I don't have the same kinds of resources that person does. Or maybe one of my goals isn't to make $1 gazillion. Maybe I want to make a difference. Maybe I want to help people. So we have to move away from the standardized one-size-fits-all solution and get into the who am I, what do I want, and how can I use my old skills to get there? It sounds simplistic, but it's the kind of tool that a reasonably motivated person can do something with.
I'm excited to let our audience learn about this from you, Larry, because I think what you're talking about is why a lot of times you may follow someone and do exactly as they've said, get the result that they've got, but not be able to keep it. Because whatever the driver was in that person was not the same driver in you. And so you may get the results, but you can't sustain it.
Exactly. I use networking as an example. I'm an introvert, and I really don't like networking, but I recognized I've had to do it throughout my career. And I would go to in-person networking events. I would say, no, but that's over. And people say, why, you're so good at it. And I said, but I hate it. I absolutely hate it. But what I learned to do was to really focus on the parts of it that I really enjoy. And the parts I really enjoyed was exchanging stories and getting to know people. As long as I focused on the relationship building and stayed away from selling and stayed away from cherry picking and stayed away from you go in with a list of what you want to achieve. When I stayed away from that, I was more comfortable because I was relating to people as people. And once the relationship was there, we were positioned to do some kind of business. Now that worked for me. It may not work for other people. Other people may need the agenda. But it goes back to who am I and what really works for me. Just think about it. If you have a personal connection with somebody, anything is possible. But if you don't have a personal connection, nothing is going to work. And so by leading with our personality, leading with our strengths, ideally we connect with people who have compatible strengths. And together we can do some amazing things. The flip side is, if there's a disconnect, it's not going to work. So don't push it. Don't waste each other's time. So I learned that in networking. It continues to work now. Out of the blue, I met somebody. Again, we just got chatting and it turned out we are so much aligned. So we're talking about doing some work together. Just out of the blue. That's networking. But I think it's because I am now comfortable in being who I am. I'm not trying to be somebody promoting my services. I'm just somebody meeting people in an environment we're most comfortable in.
Larry, I wonder, from everything that you've done, what is probably the one lesson you wished you had learned earlier in the professional services business?
Oh, wow. One lesson. I think it would have to be to spend more time understanding my strengths and embracing those strengths. When I look back, I spent too much time, wasted too much time, money, and emotional energy, either not knowing what I wanted to do or following somebody's well-intended but wrong advice. When I finished high school, had I spent more time thinking about what would make me really happy than how do I get a job, things could well have been easier. I'm an experiential learner, so if I knew that then, it would be, okay, instead of going on to university, take a year off and travel, get some more world experience. So it would be very much a case of doing a better job of getting to know myself. It's taken me a lifetime to do it. And it's okay now that, yeah, if I'd known this a whole bunch of years ago, like they tell you, you're doing a story right now.
It's interesting what you said about following well-intentioned but not the right advice for you. A previous guest who's done a research with startup companies for the top reasons why startups fail. And he was talking about startups that have got venture capital backing them. And still the problem, they were failing at a very high rate. And he said one of the top reasons is that they followed the advice of a mentor. They followed the advice of other startups, peers who had created success. All the things that people tell you to do. Find a mentor, get into a peer group of people who are succeeding, find people who have done very well at doing this thing and get advice. And he was very surprised in his finding. That was one of the top reasons that startups failed, because, like you said, every person is different. Every situation is different. The time they created success in the market was different. All those nuances that created that success that sometimes we think is just like a straight line.
I'm reading a book now called Let Them Theory. And it's all about letting other people do what they think is right for themselves and let me do what is right for me. It's great to get the advice of mentors. I've had lots of really helpful mentors who have given me lots of sometimes good advice, sometimes just in telling their stories, I was able to extract a lesson from it. Quick example, when I was training to be a lawyer, senior partner kept saying, look after your clients and they'll always look after you. You have to look after your clients, they'll always look after you. And I would say, what does that mean? Tell me what it means. And so we told stories about when they were going through tough times, their farm clients would bring food instead of paying for it. They said, that's what it's all about, is looking after each other. So once I had the story, then I could pull out my own meaning. So I had people like that. I've also had people who just told me what I should be doing. And I'm thinking, why would I want to do that? Because it just wouldn't work for me. So I found that thanks to experiential learning, the best mentors, the best advice is not direct, succinct lessons, but stories that we can extract our own meaning from. Another example, I worked on a project and the person I'm working with kept saying Frank Sinatra never moved pianos. I mean, thinking, what does that have to do with anything? And he stopped and thought Frank Sinatra was a great singer. He could have moved pianos, but he didn't. He stuck to singing. So that expression made sense. Applying it to my situation, I'm a pretty good writer, but a lousy bookkeeper. So I stick to writing and stay away from bookkeeping. So it's a case of maybe extracting a lesson from a story rather than in the strict model. And somebody could tell a story in maybe 200-300 words that have more impact than a 10-word instruction. We can't demean the value of other people, but it might be a case of asking the mentor, okay, Tell me what the gist of that is. What's the takeaway for that? What's the important element there? Or peer groups, asking them, what did you do wrong in order to do things right? To get the experiential component in there rather than just the strict lesson.
Engage with the information. Engage with someone else's wealth of experience and think through it yourself rather than let me just do what they did. Draw the lessons to get value out of it because everybody has a wealth of experience. And sometimes maybe it's just a word that gives you an idea and that's all you needed to hear. That was enough to give you exactly what you needed to move forward.
Oh, totally. Just totally. And just a quick look at experiential learning. There's 4 stages of experiential learning. One is the experience. And then there's the reflection on it. What happened? Who did what? What surprised me? What delighted me? What disappointed me? Generalization, drawing a conclusion from it. What does this mean? What does this whole process mean? And the fourth one is, how do I apply this? Look at the detail, not just the outcome, but taking a look at what went right, what went wrong, drawing a conclusion. And, okay, so how can I apply this conclusion in my business, in my life? So once we start to pull apart experiences, they're just rich with lessons. I keep smiling that so many people say experience is the best teacher, but nobody tells us how to learn from experience. It's only when we pull apart the stories that we start to get the real gist of them.
Something that we often don't think about in this culture of information being thrown at us. And now with AI, everything is just put right in front of us. And we forget the critical part is that engaging with the information in a certain way to get something out of it.
Oh, absolutely. Engaging is the right word because you start to pull apart elements in a story and there's just so many variables there. And you think, okay, so if these 3 variables produce this situation, what do I add as another variable? Or whether we change one another? The learning potential is so rich, just so rich.
Now, to the entrepreneur who's focused on saying, I've started my professional services business. I don't know many people. I'm trying this marketing thing. And you mentioned authentic marketing, building relationships. Could you tell me, if you were starting over today, Larry, what would be your first step?
If I was starting today, my first step, I think the first step would be trying to find an unmet market niche that my bundle of resources could meet. And it'd just be a case of doing a lot of talking to people I liked, people I wanted to be with. Questions like, what's really bugging you? What would make your life better? And all those kinds of stuff. And then try to figure out how to use my skills to do that. One thing that comes to mind, here's an example of a story. Lots of people talk about writing a book, but not lots of people know how to write a book. I do. So I could help people write a book. I could help people publish a book. Does everybody want to do that? No. But all I need 4 or 5 clients. I wouldn't be a ghostwriter. I'd be their, collaborator or whatnot to take it from concept stage to production stage. And again, that's experience I've never marketed before, but that would be a useful kind of a tool. Now, I'm not plugging business now because I'm not looking for businesses, but using this as an example. Somebody has been in business for 4, 5, 6 years. They've got some really good experience. They've got great track record serving clients. The best way to take the business to the next level is to write a book. Lots of people write a book. Where do you start? Hey, I could help. I don't have a formula, but I've done enough books that I could do it. And I know how to get them produced. I know how to market them. So I could bundle that into a service to meet the needs of 1, 2, 5, 10 people. I couldn't have a huge client list, but it could be very specialized. And the same kind of thing can be done with other areas. You do a lot of podcasting, so you could probably help people with their messaging, their communication, telling their stories, communicating their brand story. So it's a case of really stepping aside from the normal tags and labels and saying, how can I use my skills to help that person? And every market is different.
Because you always felt you were a writer and you finally discovered that was your thing, that perfectly would align with providing that service of helping a person write a book. Because I think a lot of times people try to sell things that they're not particularly passionate about and they don't really care that much about. And of course, it shows in the long run. They resent the clients, they resent the work. Eventually, they resent even what they're being paid because it was never something they really wanted to do.
Most of us might telling about things we've enjoyed. So just going back to my example of writing a book, instead of writing, just talk. Just start to tell stories. We can use AI and other technology to convert it to text and then get a writer. So there's so many opportunities. Again, once we get beyond the labels and once we get beyond the processes, there's so many things that can be done. And it's just a case of being open to leveraging our tools or leveraging our resources to benefit others. Sure, we want to get paid, but at the end of the game, and you're not satisfying clients. It's not with the effort.
You talked about identifying your unique strengths and using your intuition as the driver of learning. And you're trying to think of getting from A to B. Could you give an example?
A good starting point, identifying what you want, the big picture, what you want. And I've broken that down into the have, do, and be to simplify it. So once there's that big picture there, it's not a case of just sitting back and dreaming and keeping your fingers crossed, hoping that it will drop out of the sky. It's taking inspired action. My classic example of inspired action is from my father. He used to talk about two girls running a school, and the school bell rang, and one girl says, let's stop and pray that we don't get late for school. And the other one said, no, let's pray when we're running. That's inspired action, praying when you're running, okay? And he lived in a different time and had different priorities. But that is inspired action. Inspired action is doing something beyond routine. It's something that has a direct connection with where we want to be. So the first stage, obviously, is decide what you really want. And then there's the actions that have to be taken. And like 30, 90-day plans of the inspired actions, we break them down into what has to be done in 30 days, what has to be done in 60 days, what has to be done in 90 days. I keep breaking it down and breaking it down and breaking it down and breaking it down. Ideally, that once this process is finished, you'll know what you're going to be doing tomorrow. You'll know one thing you have to do within 24 hours to get this thing up and running. So it's a case of clarifying the big picture and then breaking it down and breaking it down and breaking it down and breaking it down. Again, I'm a big fan of the concept of one thing. What is one thing you can do right now to make a difference? And once that one thing is done, another one thing. And then after 30, 60, 90 days, you'll have a whole string of one things that are done. And the momentum is there that it will carry on. I guess I subconsciously do this. First thing every morning, I think, now what is one thing I have to get done today? And everything else is bonus. I quite often do lists of 9 or 10. And sometimes I get all done, and sometimes I don't. If I started the day saying, this is one thing I want done by the end of the day. And if it works out, you got tick mark off and you feel good, you've got the momentum. If not, okay, so what did I learn? What went wrong? What prevented that one thing from happening? Maybe it was too ambitious. Maybe it wasn't clear. Maybe I didn't have the resources. Maybe I didn't think it through.
Oh, thank you so much for that, Larry. It's been a pleasure having you on the podcast again. Please, I'd want to know, what is it that you're looking forward to the future? Maybe future trends that excite you in your space. What does the future look like?
I have no idea. It's funny. I just got so many ideas bouncing around in my head right now. I honestly don't know. I want to connect with as many people as I can. I certainly want to help people with the course. I'm always open for fun opportunities.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much, Larry. Please, to the audience, if you can go to larryeasto.com. It'll be linked in the description, as well as a link if you'd like to know more about his book and his course.
Can I add one more item or reference to the course?
Sure.
Go to my website. Option A on the first page will take you to the course. And if anybody identifies as highly sensitive, they will get a 25% discount. That's all in the course. And self-identifying, you don't have to pass the test. I'm highly sensitive, you get a 25% discount on the course. And there's also 2 free books on the front page of the website.
Wonderful. Please make use of those resources. Larry, it's been a pleasure. You've got us thinking differently, and that's always a good time.
This was great.